We are now joined by, in my opinion, the best referee in the world, Mr. Marc Goddard. We wanted to have Marc on today to speak about the loss of Neil Hall, a legendary referee from the UK scene as well. And I didn't think there was anyone better we could have on than Marc to talk about this. So first of all, Marc, very sorry for your loss. Neil passing away last week after a bout with COVID. I guess, first of all, did this come as a big shock to you as it did to us? Were you aware that he was struggling with COVID since January after complications came up with a back surgery?
The short answer to that is no. I didn't know. Obviously, I knew that Neil was having severe problems with his back. I knew he had back surgery because, funnily enough, on the second fight island last year, Neil was due to come over and work on that second one, the one we had in October. But it turns out, obviously, he was having complications from his back, etc., etc. Obviously, I don't know the full details of that. That's for the doctors to decide, or Kath, his wife, to decide. But he basically had complications from an infection, and that transpired into whether it was hospital related or not. It transpired into a COVID situation that got onto his lungs, and obviously, the net result is very sadly still the same. That unfortunately, it took Neil with it, and there was a lot of people. I got funnily enough, because it was weird, because I was in Sainsbury's. The missus had sent me back out to go and get some stuff that I'd forgotten as normal, and I was walking round. And my phone rang, so I look at my phone, it's Neil, so it's coming up, Neil. So it's obviously still on my phone, I was like, oh. And as I get back outside, and then I phone back, and actually Kath answered. It was like, and it's weird, mate, because you know almost instantly. It's like if you're walking about and one of your mates' wives phone you, you automatically assume the worst. You think, bloody hell, what's happened? What's wrong? And we just had a conversation with Kath, and there was a few people that she was phoning round very kindly, was and very considerately was phoning round on a one-to-one basis before she obviously it was Kath's right within herself to go public with it, but it was a good job I was sat in my car, because I was sat down, because honestly when she told me, it was like a liver kick, a gut punch, like all the air was out of me. And like I said, it's the overriding thing is sadly Neil didn't make it, but I know that I can hear his gravelly voice up now telling us to cop the fuck on and get on with it, because he wouldn't want this. And like I was saying I think I was saying to you off camera, loads of people knew Neil. Anyone who was anyone in UK MMA knew Neil. And aside from, obviously, he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he was all the tough northerner and all that. Taking all that to one side, like I was saying to you, Neil was just a good bloke. He was a damn good bloke, Neil was. And he was good fun to be around, and we always had a laugh. And I've worked with Neil, obviously, I'd worked with Neil regionally, and we'd seen each other over the years. Then when he came in with me with Cage Warriors, he worked there for a few years. He was, like I said, heart on the sleeve type of bloke. And it's, obviously first and foremost, an extremely sad loss for his family, his wife Kath, and his son Dan, who's also a great kid, a great lad, and everybody who knew him in UK MMA. Very, very sad.
I was wondering, Marc, because a lot of the new fans of the sport, they probably don't recognise how much of a trailblazer you are and Neil was in terms of, going to the biggest stages of the world and kind of refereeing and holding your own among the other officials in the world. Just how much does Neil mean to the officiating community, and how central was he to that community with the judges, the referees, and everything else?
Well, like I said, Neil's been around the sport from the same as a few of us. Neil was there from day one, and everybody knew him. Literally, the MMA community in the UK is still a small thing. It's still a it's still a niche sport. And obviously 20 years ago, it was niche with a capital N, you know. And but I can testify that Neil Hall was absolutely one of the trailblazers, and he was there, you know, from day one. He's a martial artist. Got into he competed in MMA, had his own gym, was teaching people, and then obviously found his way into the officiating side, and that's where I got to know Neil. Obviously, I knew him from the scene, but when he crossed over and started pushing more into the side of being an official, he came into Cage Warriors, and I wanted to help Neil as much as I could, but he also had his own. Neil had up north. He was all the little shows. Like, he was providing such a pivotal service, you know, for so many shows that you know, I couldn't get around them. I was out doing my own thing and whatnot. But Neil had his own little setup, MMA officials, and he helped develop officials. He helped develop, and he brought up a lot of referees and judges and gave them their first break into the small shows. He really was providing such. It was a grassroots service. Obviously, we'd all came up through that way, but Neil had really grabbed that by the scruff of the neck, and there was a lot of shows were very reliant on Neil, his team, and his services. I honestly, I can't say enough good things about him. And it's not, you know, everybody says about the adage of, unfortunately, that Neil's no longer with us, etc., etc. If you asked me this a year ago or 5 years ago, I'd be telling you exactly the same things.
Mark, does it make it maybe a little bit harder? Obviously, you know, with COVID and stuff, you can't go and obviously, you know, physically pay your respects as well. Is there, you know, him being a close friend of yours and you've worked with him for so many years, does that make it a little bit harder as well?
Well, see, it's a weird way. Absolutely, yeah, because, you know, there's a couple of things to this. Obviously, the funeral. I know that funnily enough, his wife Kath has just been in touch, and she put it out public that the funeral date has actually been set for the end of this month, the 29th. I'm probably out the country at the time, but by the same token, we couldn't go anyway, because obviously the COVID restrictions are going to be restricted, obviously for immediate family, you know, of which I'm not. And Neil had a lot of good friends and a lot of long-standing friends in the MMA community who would like to be able to pay our respects. So Kath had kindly put out the details that there will be an online service too, and that's actually going to be, I think it's available for 48 hours after the initial, you know, the actual service in itself. So a lot of people can, you know, access it or tune into it, whatever you want to be, for want of a better description, and say their goodbyes to Neil in that way.
Brilliant stuff.
Your style, Mark, is famed, and I know this because I spoke to a lot of officials before you did that amazing feature with MMA On Point. A lot of officials told me that it's your composure in chaotic situations and your general command of the fighters and the octagon that makes you a very special referee. Is there anything you could pinpoint as like a cornerstone of Neil's philosophy or his refereeing when he was in there?
Yeah, I think like Neil's style, you know, I'm there because I can hear his voice now. You know, when you hear Neil's voice, he was, you know, a Leeds kid, and he had that northern growl. He had a very distinctive, gravelly voice. And yeah, Neil was a damn good ref, you know, because he lived and breathed the sport, and he cared. And like I keep saying about when the older school were becoming refs, we had no idea. Obviously, from our own perspective, we had no idea what this was going to become. It was a true, and I'm not saying it sets us any different to other people, but it does in the same token, because when we moved into being an official, there only was grassroots available for us, Cage Warriors and stuff at a later date. You know, Cage Rage when they went on to become what they were doing in the UK, BAMA, things like that. but every single show we were involved in was grassroots to some degree. So the people that were doing this, myself and Neil, and namely Leon and the other guys that have been around at that time, like everything was pure. Do you know what I mean? Everything was, you know, we weren't getting paid. We didn't know what it was going to become. We didn't know that UFC was going to blow up globally and then start trawling the world. None of that matters to us back then. We were all a bunch of guys who had martial artists and fighters, and then we moved over into the officiating side. And Neil was one of those, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's why I know that, you know, Neil's intentions for the sport and wanting to do good by people and wanting to do good by promotions and stuff like that, it was very pure. Namely because, you know, we had come up that way. We crossed over into the sport in a way that just happened for us. And I'm not saying, because what I'm saying is like to draw the parallel there, the divide. A lot of people will turn on the TV now, as you know, and go, I want to be a UFC referee. Yeah. Hold your horses there. You know, it doesn't work like that, but that's what people see. It's like, you know, everybody wants the end result, right? But not necessarily what it takes to get there. But I can say on my heart and with true conviction, Neil Hall put in the miles and put in the service to this sport, and that's why I'll always have a place in my heart, in my head, from an undying respect perspective for Neil Hall.
Mark, can you pinpoint maybe something off the top of your head? I'm sure that there's many. Is there a particular story or a moment that you'll fondly remember when you think of Neil?
Yeah, there's a couple. A few of the guys, like the traveling guys. Neil was famed for his appetite, right? Neil liked a healthy meal and he liked a hearty meal, and we always used to laugh on the road because Neil would tell us some stories about. He was a bit like me in that way. He was very defensive over his food, Neil was, and he was very to the point. And we used to laugh about some stories where there was a particular takeaway, and this is the best thing about it. You know, Neil will be sitting, he'll be looking down here now, making sure we're making light of the situation, not talking about refereeing decisions. And yeah, he was telling us stories about one of his local takeaways that he had phoned up for his usual order, and for want of a better description, they fucked it up. And Neil was none too happy about it, so he took himself and the offending food down to the establishment in question and introduced himself to the kitchen in true Neil Hall fashion. That's a story that's always going to stick around with me for Neil. Brilliant. And then just to compound that, we were one of the UFCs. I can't remember exactly which. Might have been Holland or something. We were traveling, and there was a load of us had gone out for a meal the night before. Paul Sutherland was there, Leon was there, the other judges, and basically we'd all ordered our food. The waitress had brought it out, and the plates somehow got mixed up a little bit, and this was not to Neil's pleasure. He'd already started eating when the waitress had tried to say to him, basically, sir, I think you're eating someone else's meal. And then he's stopped. Like Paul Sutherland will laugh because he's just stopped, you know, and that voice again, he's come out and he's like, what the fuck have I got here? And it's just like, you know, those are the stories that will stick with me from a very personal perspective. Brilliant. And then, yeah, like I said, for his services to mixed martial arts, everybody can see them, everybody can talk about them. But there's a lot of good, happy memories that I'll take along with me, as well as Neil's professional acclaim and accolades too.
That was amazing. Thanks so much for sharing
Fantastic
those.
For sharing that, yeah, definitely.
I saw Dan Mohavetti put out a video of them in the back of a cab from back in the day. Neil trying to get into the cab, it was already wedged. Looked like you had great crack when you were together anyway, which is great to see, and a beautiful tribute just given us. If you don't mind, can we ask you about this crazy knee situation? Am I the difference between the knee on Darren Stewart last week and the difference between the knee on Jan? I know Mark Ratner has come out and talked about it. I know I'm putting you on the spot. I haven't told you we're going to ask you about this. But I guess one of the big things that came out of last weekend is confusion. I see a lot of confusion from Petr Jan's team in terms of why is this a disqualification and this one is a no contest. I believe it's to the discretion of the referee, is what Mark Ratner basically said. Can you give us any insight?
When did Mark come out?
At the event.
He went backstage and just spoke to the media, and he had about a minute-long comment, very concise, where he basically described the fact that the intentional situation, like one referee deemed it to be an intentional knee, Jan had thrown on Sterling, while Herb Dean had decided that it was not an intentional knee that Anders landed on Darren Stewart. Does it come down to that, basically? What way is the referee interpreting what has happened in that situation?
That is absolutely correct. There's two points to this that will make. Obviously, as a pragmatist, it suits me. I didn't know what Mark had come out and said, but yeah, you're entirely right, and he's entirely right. The call of the intent, if you like, and the scenario and the action leading up to it is deemed by the referee. However, the action of being a down fighter or the understanding of being a down fighter, that's not up for deliberation. That is actual, and that is succinct, for want of a better description. And here we are in 2021 with the sport so much further down the line. A lot of people are still not understanding to me, what is a basic fucking concept, okay? It is written and it is clear what constitutes a down fighter. Very clear. It's all obviously there's a lot of deliberation and a lot of questioning afterwards as to the outcomes or what's actually happened as the result of those knees. But let me make one point abundantly clear. The action of what constitutes and what makes it an illegal action, it's concrete, it's written, and you know, if I had £1 for every time I was trying to explain this to somebody, you know, that's what referees are there to do, really, sometimes to explain the rules. And the way I'm going to put it is this, you know, this is what one of the things that dogs us in milestone fashion. I know we've kind of spoke about this in other ways. You know, a lot of people talk about misunderstanding of the rules. It dogs us and it hurts us in so many ways because the fighters don't know. Now, you tell me another sport at a professional level, you know, if I'm playing football or soccer in a country and I'm running and I suddenly pick up the ball and run with it, I know there's a fucking problem, right?
Yeah.
Right? We know you can't do that. If I'm boxing in Argentina or I'm boxing in Sweden, if I'm boxing in Canada and I'm boxing in Japan, if all of a sudden I decide to dive and pounce on your fucking legs, we know there's an issue, right? Now, why do we know that? That's because those two sports have a deep historical basis. Mixed martial arts, for want of a better description, to the layman, it's 26 years old, okay? And everybody gets all uppity and starts jumping up and down in the comments. We know about Vale Tudo, we know about Pancrase, we know about Shuto in its various guises. But the sport as we know it today, MMA, or the acronym, you know, if you go to the pub, classic case in point, you go to the pub and you say to somebody, MMA, what? They don't know what you're talking about. When you say UFC, you know, they understand it. It's Coca-Cola, it's Hoover, it's the brand. So it's a 26-year-old sport. Many of the people who helped build, create, talk about, fix, fashion, what to do with the sport are still involved. And that's good and bad. So what people are losing sight of is obviously we are trying to evolve at an incredible rate. The other sports, football, rugby, boxing, that I'm, you know, using an analogy against, they're steeped in history and tradition. They sorted their shit out over 100 years ago when they had time to figure out, you know what, this rule doesn't work, or this rule does work, etc., etc. We are still in that fundamental process. Look at what we're doing with IMAF as a prime example. The sport is still fundamentally fragmented in so many different countries. It doesn't look the same. We don't have that with other comparable sports. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what compounds the point that I'm trying to make. People are losing sight of the fact that this is still a very young sport. There's still now we do have a unified rules document that has been around for a large number of years, but unfortunately for more than one reason, you know, the work in which we are trying to put in, promoters, regulators, officials, fighters, everybody involved in the sport, we all have a collective responsibility to bring the level up as much as we can. But it's something that I hammer home to officials when I'm doing seminars worldwide. Do not lose sight of the fact that we're a young sport. Things are getting better all the time. You know, the fighters, the conditions, the promotions, all of these things. And part of that, you know, a pillar and post to that is the officials and the adaptation of a unified rule set, and more importantly, the understanding of said rule set.
Beautifully said. My
Yeah.
opinion.
Do you think it's just basically people need to see more of these situations and understand the grounded situation? Do you think that's where the confusion comes for the majority of the fan base, and say members of Jan's team who aren't who probably are invested in the situation? We always talk about it. People who are invested in the situation are obviously going to see some things differently than other people. But is it just kind of, do you think it's on the likes of commentators, media members, to really describe that grounded situation so people understand it more? Like, it becomes so natural. It's like a handball, right?
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. That like commentators said there, they have a huge responsibility, fucking ginormous responsibility when it comes to educating because what happens is people like me or John or Herb, whoever it may be, yeah, we can do various things and like interviews like this and social channels and wherever it may be, etc., etc. And you know, we're doing our best to try and get the message out there, or an educational thing out there. But when you're talking about bang for your buck on a UFC pay-per-view where there's potentially over 1 million people who've paid for that pay-per-view watching, you can't get that fucking sort of audience anywhere else. It's priceless. Yeah. So in instances like that, when you have over 1 million people captive, and look, we also have to be realistic here, guys, is that you cannot expect. Listen, I'll use football again as a perfect analogy. Go to any pub on a Saturday night, you've got fucking 20 Jose Mourinho's and 35 Mike Reeds in the pub, right? Because but it's not realistic. Every single watching fan, it's not their job to know the rules inside out, all the little niceties. But for the broader brush and to understand the basic parameters, you know, you like I keep saying, being able to use the commentary team, and obviously for that, the platform and the voice that they have, I do want to get them in unison. That's why I always give out for Dan Hardy. And I know that Dan's been in the news very recently for other John Goddard's another guy, and Mike's fucking gonna get it off me as well, Bisping, because the last time I was saying to him, say, look, the next time I'm with you, you're coming with me. You're gonna sit down with me. Just give me 4 hours. Give me 4 hours with the guys, and they won't repeat the same things. I will help those guys to get through, and. DC's been doing great recently. He was talking about when he was going out, and this is a double champ. This is this guy's he's an Olympic caliber wrestler, USA Olympic team wrestling, a double champ of the UFC, etc., etc. It's just such a strange anomaly that the sport of MMA you know, to have people at the top, I'm going to say such a high level. There is no higher level. When you're fighting at a world championship level for the UFC, you best believe you should know the rules as a participant, at least. You know, it's like I said, but there's a lot of little anomalies and grey areas around it. But like I said, we're getting better. We are getting better. There's a thirst for people to think, and we have to be realistic too. You know, I would love to be able to. For me, listen, if I'm not at an event, I'm the guy who sat at home at 4. My missus is going berserk because I'm downstairs at 4 a.m. screaming at the fucking wall where the TV is because things are going wrong. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm emotionally invested in the sport. Look, we're getting better, guys. You know, just keep the faith and don't lose sight of the fact that things can be a little off track and things can be a little skewed at the minute because we're still formative. Don't lose sight of that fact. And the commentators and other guys, leave them to me. You know, we're going slowly but surely. We're going to get around them. We're going to help them. We're a team together. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Because you know the easiest thing in the world is to go, fuck, oh, he done this, he done that. Listen, nobody knows that more than me, what that feels like. You do this, you do that. I want to help the commentators, any commentator out there. So I was going back with Dan Hardy. So I was going to make the point. I remember when Dan first got the call for the UFC because he called me and he said, when is your next course in the UK? And I was doing like little one-day things. He said, when is your next course in the UK? And I told him, I said, look, I'm going to do a one-day thingy down in London. Why is that? And he said, well, between you and me, he said, it's going to come out sooner or later, but I'm actually going to be commentating for the UFC. And before I commentate for the UFC, I want to know to the best of my ability what I'm talking about. So he actually came and sat and paid for a whole day through an introductory workshop for unified rules of refs and judges. How the fuck can you not respect that?
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing. And I think it would be invaluable if, like, I mean, I don't know why any commentator wouldn't want you to do that. You've done this all over the world. I think the UFC should commission it, get you over there, get it going for the whole week. Honestly, Mark, I think it would be really invaluable for people. And I know people who have went to them seminars and have been blown away by, you know, somebody walks in thinking they know everything already. And then they're like, holy shit, I knew nothing when they come out of it, you know?
Yeah, I think that was a big part of the confusion on Saturday night in the Anderson Stewart fight was the commentators didn't really know what was going on. And you see that, you know, that sprouts online and it just creates mass confusion. I think if those guys were willing to step up and do that like Dan did, you'd have the answers there and then.
Yeah. I'm here. And like we said, is obviously, you know, taking the commentators as one to be able to come. You know, I've done it with some, like John Gooden, Dan, Mike. Me and Mike were last year in 2019, before all the bullshit last year, when we were sat down in Vegas and after an event, I said, hey, listen, you know, actually, no, it was last year, one of the events last year. And I was saying, look, the next time I come out, or we've got to figure out a schedule, come and spend the morning with me. And I'll do this for free because I want you to get as much information as possible. And you can start drip feeding out these little nuggets of information, the little bits of gold. It's free info just to be able to help, you know, the fans at home. Because look, everybody says, well, the fans this, the fans that. Yes and no. Obviously, look, first and foremost, the fighters are the primary concern. And generally, look, they do know what the rules are. You know, it's when it comes to obviously inherent fouls and stuff like that can happen all the time. But all the little when it comes to, like you're saying, you know, one referee decided this, one referee decided that, that is going to create confusion and people are going to naturally question that, you know. But if we can do what we can, when we can, little by little, and just get out there and help to just bring the awareness up and the education of this sport in the best possible way.
Definitely.
just one more from me, Mark, and it's take your refereeing hat off completely here. I just wanted to ask you about Leon Edwards, a guy you've watched come up on the scene all the way from his early days in Birmingham, all the way to these UFC main events. A tough one at the weekend, to say the least, to see the fight ended that way. Completely understand the decision, don't get me wrong, but must be tough having seen a guy go the whole way from your regional scene right to the top of the UFC and be looking so good, right, until the fell was delivered. Was there some shouts in the Goddard household at 4 a.m. on Saturday night is what I want to know.
Not for that one. Listen, talk about taking your referee's hat off, mate. Look at this. That's why I keep my hat on. It's fabulous. That's why I keep the hat on. This getting cut tomorrow. A lot of people talk about my hair. They talk about my hair more on Twitter than me, but whatever. Yeah, Leon. Look, it's weird because Leon's a good kid. You know, I like him. I will never ref him in the UFC because he's one of those. I actually used to teach Leon. I was there when he first walked through the doors as an amateur in Erdington in Birmingham. You know, I've had this conversation with Ariel before. That's why you've never saw me referee Leon, because I removed myself away from it. But yeah, it was most frustrating. You know, it's obviously a freak accident. You know, that don't start me about that. You know, with what we do with eye pokes and the remedies for that, that's coming. But yeah, it was obviously absolutely the right call by the doctor and the referee to stop that match. Thankfully, Bilal went off to hospital and there was no permanent damage. I did intend to stay up and watch the fight, but after a couple of whiskeys, I fell asleep. I fell asleep before the main card. I can't remember which fight I got to, but when I woke up in the morning, and Sunday mornings are always fun in my house, especially after a UFC, because the notifications on my phone are quite something. You know, my Sunday morning DMs are the best DMs, but because it's all this, you know, everybody's blowing up about, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? Etc. But the kid's doing great, you know. He was on eight straight wins, and then obviously a very unfortunate ending to that fight, completely accidental. And who knows what happens? Do they run it back, or do they match him up with somebody else? I'm not sure.
It's a tough one.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories about Neil, and then giving us basically a seminar for ourselves on this knee situation. I really appreciate it, man. But honestly, every time you talk about these things, it's like a revelation for a lot of people, including myself. So I really appreciate it. And I really hope the commentators take you up on
Definitely.
On this offer.
100%.
I wouldn't say give it to them for free. Say half price, Mark. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's
10% off.
I'll tell you who done this was Nick Pete and Adam Cattrall. If you heard about them, they actually said about in the last fight, Ireland, and I'm sure like it's almost like they knew what they were doing. I think they planned it because we had a couple of nights off, like a downtime before that, and we were staying in the same hotel and we were watching the football in the bar, and it, cut a long story short, I was having a beer with the guys, and as I was walking past, I heard Nick say something fucking stupid about MMA rules. So I've grabbed him straight away and gone, hey, a minute.
It's not Nick.
And I've grabbed him straight away and said, what did you say? And then I said, right, tomorrow night, you to Adam. I said, you're getting it. And then we actually sat down, and honestly, fair play to the guys. I think they're two good guys, the Golden. And so we sat there, and basically it was like, boom, verbatim. I was there for an hour and a bit with them, and you know, yeah, it was for free. Well, actually, it wasn't for free. There's a few lefes in payment. A few, and you know, mate, that lefes in Abu Dhabi cost some dollars. So there was method in the madness. But we sat down, and look, I would do it for you two guys next time I'm in Ireland. Look,
appreciate it.
It's not always about. I want to, make money and this, that, and the other. When you get people of influence, reporters, commentators, I find it my duty to help you guys know what you're talking about, because you guys are providing a service, right? You do this, get together every week. You've got a good fan base, a good listener base. People like you. Having you guys out there, it's extra eyes and ears, or in this case, is brains and mouths to be able to go forth and speak the gospel of unified MMA.
We'll get
I really
you a few
appreciate
Guinness.
it, Mark.
Won't be left,
absolutely.
Guinness is good by me, mate. That's cool.
Well, look, Mark, thank you so much for your time. As I said, I consider you the best referee in the world, and I think anyone who listens to this will agree with me. Thank you for everything you do, and thank you again so much for sharing your stories about Neil. I really appreciate it. And sorry for your loss again, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Nice one, guys. Speak to you soon.
All the best. Talk
Thanks,
soon,
Mark.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hello, guys. If you want to hear more of The Bash, you can subscribe to us on all our wonderful channels on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and all that other shit.
And click the links below. Click the links below. The notification button. It comes straight to your phone if we've any fresh content. And also hit the subscribe button. It does help. You're some plonker.
It's very serious.